Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to allow a little bit of time for people to join us, join the call today. For those of you who do not know, my name is Myisha Battle, and I will be presenting today all about desires, what to do with them in the dating app environment. So I'll go ahead and bring up the presentation for today, and we can get started. So, today we're going to talk about claiming your desires, specifically within field. What does that mean to claim your desires when you're dating? You'll notice at the bottom, that's me, Myisha Battle. I am a certified clinical sexologist and I'm a sex and dating coach. So, not every sex coach is a dating coach, and not every dating coach is a sex coach. I personally believe that the two go hand in hand. And so I've chosen to bring these worlds together because for me, as a dater in the past, I couldn't separate sex from dating. It was really important for me to find partners who I meshed with really well on a sexual level and could also see that long term compatibility as well. So, whereas some dating coaches just focus on, okay, how do you go out and actually meet people? They don't really touch on the sexuality piece. And not all sex coaches love, like I do, talking about, okay, now that you've met somebody, what happens in the bedroom? So, with that, I'll show you what was the result of my interest in both sex and dating. My book, This Is Supposed to Be Fun: How to Find Joy in Hooking Up, Settling Down, and Everything in Between. I wrote this book to help people learn how to find partners who were like minded when it came to their desires, because this was my experience. It was also the experience of the clients that I was working with who also really valued this process of using, particularly online dating, but not exclusively dating, to find partners who they really connected with on a sexual level. And that meant a lot of different things. It meant everything from, I'm gray sexual or asexual and not sure if the hookup culture of apps is going to work for me. It was people who were coupled, who were opening their relationships and trying to figure out how to navigate that within the structures of app based dating. It was people who were like, I'm thinking that I identify as kinky and I'm interested in exploring BDSM. How do I make that work in a context that feels really vanilla? So it was important for me to write this book to summarize all the work that I've done. And now I've been in practice for 8 years, with now hundreds of clients who have successfully navigated the world of dating and gotten what they wanted because they were brave enough to put their desires out there. And that's ultimately what I want to help you do today. I want to help you define and incorporate your desires into your dating life. So, not to see those two things as separate, but to really bring them together and hopefully have better sexual experiences with better partners. And even if sex isn't really top of your, priorities, you're thinking about, well, this is how a lot of people do date. So how can I navigate this world knowing that that's not a priority for me? We're going to talk about that as well. So, in the first part of this presentation, I'm going to encourage you to center yourself and we're going to think about creating a dating goal. If you want to grab a note, maybe open a note up on your phone or have pen and paper next to your computer as we move along, it might be helpful for this presentation because we're going to actually do a couple exercises that I'm pulling from my book, and you'll have the opportunity to write down and create a dating goal for yourself, maybe some dating goals if you have multiple ideas of what you want. Part two, we're going to talk about your desires and really identify them through an exercise that I use with my clients called sexual values assessment. So we're going to define what your sexual values are. We all have them. I don't think we talk about them enough, but that's going to stop here because you're going to find out what your sexual values are. And then we're also going to talk about in part three, sharing both your goals and your desires in your profile. Um, and some of you might get a little scared about that. We have alternatives if that feels like too much. So that's okay. We're going to get there. But I do want you to figure out ways that you can share what you're looking for. Why are you here in this space of dating? So we want to create a profile based on your goals and your values. And finally, in part four, you're going to use your desires as you search. And that can mean on the apps or in real life, right? As you get to know people, you want to kind of suss out what their dating goals are, what their desires are. And also, I want to encourage you to stay open to any and all possibilities that might pique your interest along the way, because we're not just going to be completely goal focused here. This is a process, and there's a lot that can be learned along the way. To get started, I just want to review some dating profile missed opportunities. This is something that I see time and time again. I've seen hundreds of dating profiles at this point in my career. And so I know the common areas that people tend to not take advantage of when it comes to setting up their dating profiles. Number one, no personal info. We've all seen those profiles, right? It's a photo and just no text, right? There's nothing there for people to really glom onto and inquire about, except, of course, your gorgeous physique. But that's not where you begin and end, right? We want to definitely put information in the profile that's going to help people understand what it is that you are looking for. The second thing that I see that's a common missed opportunity is that the profile reads like a resume in that it talks about your life accomplishments and mentions nothing about why you're here in this space. Remember, we're not on LinkedIn, we're on a dating site. So it's really important for you to think about, oh, does my resume come through in what I'm putting out in this dating space? And people are guilty of doing this when they meet people in real life too. So I want you to sort of think about how you can talk more about the things that are meaningful to you rather than the things that you've accomplished. You can sprinkle in your accomplishments, of course, and people do like to see that, but we want to make sure too that you are sharing your humanity a little bit more than that. Another missed opportunity, not enough photos or outdated photos, pictures that don't really represent who you are. So there's a lot of ways that photos can be missed opportunities in this space that is largely visual. So, the way that we scroll now, the way that we search, we're very visually oriented. So if people don't have something that they're going to stop on and inquire more about, you've missed an opportunity to connect with someone who might actually think, oh, this might be a really cool person to spend time with. And the quality of the photos matters too, to a certain degree. We definitely want to see your face. We want to see a full length shot of who you are. We want to see you out doing the things that you love so that we can get a sense of who you are as a person and what you value. Vague interest. I mentioned this in my book. Everyone loves music. Everyone. If you don't like music, that's something you should definitely put in your profile because you should probably connect with other people to not listen to music with. But most people enjoy music. What kind of music do you like? Are you someone who goes out dancing to music? Is it a specific style of dance? What are you into? That's what we really want to know. We don't want these vague sort of generic buckets of interest that people can't really identify with or see themselves in. Because again, a lot of people like music, but they might not like the kind of music that you like. And ultimately, that might make a difference in how you get along. Unclear goals. That's really what we're here to do is kind of clarify why you're doing this. So we'll get through that together today. And we're also going to tackle this last one, which is your profile reads like do's and don'ts. Okay, I definitely want people to have overarching goals, and I want you to be really solid in what you value in your sexual experiences with other people. I do not want you to write out, you must be this tall, make this amount of money, do this for physical fitness, XYZ, right? Or, don't be a liar, don't be a cheater, like we want to stay away from these kinds of do's and don'ts that are meant to, of course, be sort of like gatekeepy in terms of who can connect with you, but it's not very inviting. And I think you can get to the same type of person without explicitly stating, here are the things that I really, really want. Here are the things that I don't want. That being said, I think in our minds, we can be quite limited in who we can even imagine might be interested in us and who we would be interested in. So the do's and don'ts are actually maybe keeping you from making really meaningful connections with people who fall a little outside of those parameters and who might be really sufficient and great partners sexually, intimately, non sexually. You never know. So I want you to keep all of this in mind because if you've got any of this going on in your profile right now, we want to make sure that that's corrected. And I think that going through the material that we'll go through today together is going to help with that. All right. So, jumping in, I mentioned that I want you to center yourself. This is different than being self centered and only thinking about yourself. But when it comes to dating profiles, this is your opportunity to really center what you want and what you need. And sometimes people forget that. I think we've all absorbed messages about what we should want from relationships. And those ideas come from family or our culture, media, religion, and some of those may land with us and some of them may not. So that is something to really sit with and interrogate. If you have models of relationships around you that feel really resonant, that's great. That gives you a lot of good data about what it is that you might want for your future. But a lot of us don't have examples, especially those of us who are queer, who are non binary, who are asexual, who, want to explore kink or BDSM. So the models for that aren't really evident. We have to seek them out, or we have to really sit with ourselves and say, like, in a perfect world, what would my ideal relationship or relationships look like? And that can feel really scary. So I want to make sure that people understand that this is not an easy task. But it's worthwhile because it helps you to start to form the basis of your dating goals for yourself. A lot of people take the position of trying to be as appealing to as many people as possible, and they forget that there's really only going to be a limited amount of people that they're going to click with, right? So there's no real benefit to making yourself really appealing. Okay, I know it sounds crazy because we live in a world of likes and upvotes and all of that, but really, when we're talking about connection and chemistry, and specifically sexual intimacy, which is so personal, there's only going to be a handful of people out there. So, you being you, like doubling down on who you are, is actually going to lead to better matches and more fulfilling experiences. We're not here to just be pleasing to everybody else. We're really trying to find connections that are going to work for your unique needs. So when you approach dating this way with specific goals in mind, you will find better matches for yourself. And I've seen this with my clients who maybe were hesitant at first, and you may be feeling this as well, to put themselves out there in this way and to be more transparent about what it is you actually want. But trust me, it pays off in the long run. So create a dating goal. If you want to fire up that note in your phone or grab pen and paper, please do. I hope I sort of started to stir your mind to think about ways that you might want to date. And I want you to just think about what you want from this next phase of your dating experience. Let's put the past behind us and let's really look forward to a goal that you want to work towards in your dating life now. And that could be, I want to have a lot of great sex. Great, excellent goal. I want a long term partnership. I want to explore kink. I want to add an additional partner to my relationship. Excellent. Those are all great overarching goals. And they're general, but they're specific to you, right? No one else is going to have that exact goal. That's what we're aiming for. And if you don't know what you want, that's okay too. I really encourage people to let the world know that they don't know. I think we could all benefit from doing that a little bit more in our lives and particularly in dating. So, your goal might be right now that you want to figure things out. You want to give yourself some time to explore the different possibilities of connections out there. And I think you can do that in a way that's respectful and responsible. In fact, letting people know that you're new and don't really know what you want helps people who maybe aren't in a position that they want to like teach and guide to bypass you for other partners, and then people who are available for that to find you. Consider how you might word this in your profile. So take a minute and think about what your goal might be and how you might add that into your profile. Here are some examples of dating goals that I might encourage some of my clients to form. Okay, so the first one is that I don't know, I'm just kind of figuring it out, right? So currently figuring things out. I'm here to see what kinds of connections I can make on field, right? So that's pretty clear. I'm just here to check this out. There's no judgment. I'm not like, oh, this person's figuring it out. I mean, some people might have that judgment, but I'm like, yeah, I've been at a point in my life where I was figuring it out. And I needed a lot of grace and I needed people to accept that that's where I was at, right? So putting that out there is not a bad thing. This next one, looking for short and or long-term kinky fun. Very clear, okay? And someone can inquire more what that means. But basically, you're saying, I'm here for maybe short term connections, if that's all this is. I'm open to a long term situation, but that kinky fun piece is really important to me. And let's talk more about it, right? The next one is eventually hoping to be monogamous, but staying open for now. So, this is a person who sees themselves long term in a monogamously committed relationship, but right now, that's not for them. They're dating non monogamously or they are open to lots of different possibilities in their dating life. They're just here staying open to whatever passes through their life. And we respect that as well. Okay. The next one is seeking intimate, non sexual experiences for the potential or with the potential for partnership. So, this would be someone who's in that asexual, gray sexual area who still wants that intimacy, that sense that somebody knows them and wants to spend time with them and build something long term. Um, but, they're not as interested in the sexual piece. And again, stating that explicitly helps people who are looking at this person's profile ask questions. What do you mean by intimate but non-sexual? That might be a new concept for somebody and they want to know more. But that is a great way to start the conversation, right? Oh, well, this is what I mean. These are the kind of activities I want to do. These are the things that I am not so much interested in. So if that's you, maybe I'm not the best person for you. And then finally, dating non monogamously, seeking a primary at the moment. Some people use this terminology, primary partner, some people don't. But in this person's case, what they're trying to imply here is that they are predominantly a non monogamous person. Right now, they do not have a primary partner or someone with whom they spend most of their time and energy relationship wise with. And they're looking to fill that space with someone who can be an ongoing partner for them, who also understands that this is a non-monogamous relationship. Great. So, does everybody have their goals in mind? I'm very excited to hear if people have them. And if you feel so brave, you can drop your goals in the chat and we'll shout a few out later. The next part of this that I want you to think about is identifying your desires. This is so, so, so important because Some of these goals that you saw in the previous slide, they do correlate to desires that are sexual or non-sexual, right? That's clear. But there's also a deeper level to this that I want to explore with you guys. Why it's important to identify your desires, because everyone's needs are unique. I don't think we get that message from our culture at large that has a pretty limited view of what sexual desire in partnership should look like. And I don't know about you, but I certainly didn't really identify with some of those cultural representations. Maybe because they tended to be more, white, heterosexual, monogamous leaning, all of those things. But I think it's also because it's really hard to find accurate depictions of what sex looks like in mainstream media. So yeah, it's very confusing to try to compare your personal experience with sex and intimacy to the idealized version of what that is that we get fed. And sometimes we can feel like, oh well, I'm the weird one because I don't want what I see. I want something else. Or maybe we even haven't have had in the past in our relationship experiences someone telling us we're weird for what we like or what we desire. So that ends here. Today we are celebrating everyone's unique desires, and as long as it is safe, sane, consensual, we're all about it. Most of us don't really investigate what we need to make sexual connection or our relationships feel the best for us, right? Again, I think there's more just comparing ourselves and feeling bad than there is owning who you really are sexually and what your desires truly are, because that's hard. It's hard to say, well, I see myself with two boyfriends and a girlfriend, you know, in the face of all the representations of what you're supposed to like. Now, there are some media representations that are starting to change that, but they're few and far between, right? So we've got a long way to go before that's a norm for sure. Okay. And then knowing what you value sexually really can help you add language to your profile that will speak to your best matches. And this is the thing that I think sexual values really works best for, and that's communication. So we want to use language to help us shape what we're putting out into the world, what we hope to receive back. And that language will also be resonant to people who are like, yeah, that, I'm into that. I've never heard somebody say it that way, but that sounds amazing. And I've kind of thought about that, but never been able to articulate it. So I see this in my partner clients too. I have them do a sexual values assessment, and we love to see when there's overlap, but we also love to see where there are differences and nuance and ways to engage, like, oh, you value this. I didn't know that about you, right? It gives language to something that's sometimes really difficult to explain. So here we go. We're going to define some sexual values. So again, load up that note, grab pen and paper. Think about a time when sex or intimacy felt really, really good to you. Just take a moment, sort of latch on to a memory. If nothing comes to mind, you can fantasize about something that you feel would be really good for you when it comes to sex and intimacy. And I want you to notice the specific qualities of this experience. Notice how you felt, who this was with, what was being done to whom, and what led to this experience happening for you. So, an example of this might be someone who um, was friends with their current partner before they became sexual. And they had a really lovely date in the summertime. I love to think about time of day, time of season. Some of that is really helpful also for sussing out values. Anyway, so this couple had a really lovely summertime date, very luxurious. There was, no agenda, just a lot of space and time for them to get to know each other. And at the end of that date, they had a really deeply connected sexual experience that involved a lot of power dynamics that the two of them had sort of teased around or talked about beforehand, but this was the first time that they were able to really enact that with each other. So that could be a memory or a fantasy that has a lot of information there to give us an understanding of what's really valuable to one or both parties. Okay, jot down any big themes that you're noticing that come away from, this memory or fantasy. In the example I just gave you, maybe the big themes are like, you know, building a friendship first, spending a lot of quality time, having power dynamics be a part of it, these kind of overarching just chunks and themes. And then I want you to think about any words that could summarize what was valuable about that experience or fantasy for you. What feels crucial for you to have a positive sexual experience? So this might still mean distilling it down to friendship, closeness, communication, kink, um, summer, whatever it is. Those things can be really helpful. And I mentioned seasons. Seasons are really important. We're in spring now, and things start to shift and change. So that could be really helpful for people understanding their desires as well. This is a big list. Feel free to take a second to read through it. I'm not going to linger on it too long, but if you want to grab a screen grab of it, please do. These are excerpted from my book, and I also adapted it from another values list and just sort of made it more about sex and sexual connection. But I think these are really helpful words that can help you narrow down what your sexual values are. In the book, I say go through this list, circle all the ones that feel right when it when you think about your memory or your fantasy, what is jumping out at you? And then distill that down to seven. Seven is a good amount to help you. And people are like, only seven? There's a lot that can, but forcing yourself to come to about seven sexual values will be really helpful for you to understand what's important for you long term, maybe even short term, in sexual relationships with other people. Okay, we'll give another minute on this screen and then we'll move on. Okay, now it's time to share what you're looking for. And this is the part where my clients get really scared because we've just talked about what they really want from relationships, which can feel deeply personal and maybe counter to a lot of the expectations that the world has for them. And then we talked about sexual values, which are even more personal and specific because they pertain to something very real that may have happened or a very real fantasy about what could happen for them. So then I'm saying, now tell people, tell the world. And that can feel really scary. So I want to acknowledge that. But I also want to talk about why it's important because knowing what you desire is really just the first step. And I'm so glad that everybody is here, hopefully doing this work because because you've seen the profiles out there, not everybody's doing this work, right? So you're keeping your side of the street clean. You're taking the first step in understanding who you are and what you want. But you have to share that in a way that feels good for you in order to get what you're looking for. That's just facts. I can't change that. I can't make it any different. You're going to have to share this. But I did mention that you can share it in a way that feels good for you. So if you want and you feel bold, you can put these things in your profile. You can say, looking for short term, long term, kinky fun with a lot of communication, respect, honesty, and exploration. That's a good way to sort of put your values in action and let people know what kind of experiences you want. If that feels very, very far from where you're at in your dating process, that's okay. I want you to just have these words and these ideas in your back pocket so that when you match with people, you can start to have these conversations. And we'll talk a little bit about how to get that conversation going a little bit later. But um, basically, I think the sooner you have these conversations with people, the better. And why I think that is because I work with a lot of couples who really didn't talk about what they wanted and what they desired, and they're years in and they're trying to figure out if they're compatible, right? I think a lot of us have probably been in those types of relationships. Another reason why I think it's important is because, we could all use a little bit of practice in this area. And sometimes it just takes one person to initiate this conversation of, hey, what do you like? I'm into this, I'm into that. That actually does help people to open up and takes the conversation to a more vulnerable place, which can benefit all parties involved. I definitely know that. The other piece of this that I think I want to impress upon you is that holding back on this information may keep you from getting your desires met. So a lot of times I work with clients who are on the, the big dating apps, right? And they're looking for something that's niche, that's outside of the norm. And they feel like, hey, I keep banging my head up against a wall here. I'm not getting what I want. And the reason for that is because they're not pushing themselves to really talk about what they want, and they're just hoping it'll happen to them, right? And that's not the most productive use of anyone's time, yours, not your potential partners. So holding back this information, not sharing it, not engaging with it, not owning it is really keeping you from having the best experiences possible for you. So we want to create a profile that has all of this stuff in it, hopefully. And if not, we're going to make sure that we're having entry points into conversation about what we want and sharing that information with other people. Add what makes you unique and wonderful. We absolutely want you to shine in your profile. Just do not forget to lay out specifically what your dating goals and sexual values are. You don't have to be sexually explicit. You don't have to say, like, I'm looking for, this to go in this many times a week. Okay. You do not really need to be that explicit. Um, your values can be enough. I gave the example earlier of looking for short term, long term kinky fun, where there's a lot of communication, exploration, trust, honesty, etc. Like, that's good. I think that's enough for people to understand where you're coming from. And then if you want to take it to an explicit level, that's okay. Once you meet with people, they might be curious. They might be just like turned on by the way you phrased your goals. And great. Then you can start from there and hopefully have a lot of fun. But you don't have to. You don't have to start from that point. And if you're still unclear about what you want, or you're not quite sure you want to share, you can always have an invitation to people in the profile to start a conversation there and say, let's talk to see if we connect, or, message me to learn more about why I'm here. A lot of my clients feel very private. And when I recommend Field in particular, because they know it's more of a, sex positive environment, they get a little bit nervous about saying certain things about themselves right out in the open. Even though I think it's a more welcoming space to do so, they just might have some hesitation with that, and you might experience that as well. So I've encouraged them to just say, like, hey, I'm obviously here for a reason. Let's talk about that once we match, right? So that can be a way that you keep a little bit of your privacy around this, but you are also saying, I'm open to talk about it, I'm open to sharing, and I want to know what you're bringing to the table as well. Okay, I want you to also use your desires as you search. So this isn't just you putting things out there, But now that you have this knowledge, I want you to use it as you're kind of sorting through the profiles that you see. This is actually really, really important. This can be a great way to filter people based on where you see them aligning with you or not. So you want to check for how people define themselves, look for words and phrases that signify what they're looking for and what's important to them. Some people do a really good job of this on their own. That's great. Some people don't. So you might run across those profiles that are just a picture with no text. And you might know what this person is into, maybe by the content of the pictures, but, if you match with them because you're just overwhelmingly, like, attracted to them, you need to ask, "What's going on here? Why are you here? What are you looking for?" Etcetera. So, I have no judgment if you decide to swipe right on the headless torso. It's okay, like, that's fine with no text, you know? But it is really important for you to know what this person is looking for, what they're capable of, um, because, well, safety, but also your own enjoyment. Just because someone looks like they're DTF doesn't necessarily mean that they're like the best DTF match for you. So it's worth still having a conversation and asking, "Hey, listen, seems like you might be interested in the same things I am, but I just want to clarify, what are you actually here for? What are you into?" And then notice when you may be straying from your goals and desires. It's okay. Remember, I said I want us to have goals, but I don't want us to be so firmly attached to them that we miss out on things along the way. So just notice. One of the reasons that I think it's really important to have goals and to know your values is to know when you're deviating from them. If we're out here not being intentional, then we don't know why we're making decisions or why we're not making decisions. But if you know that your goal is long term, whatever, but you see that a person is just here for the weekend and they look amazing and you want to meet up with them, there shouldn't be any judgment to following that lead and noticing where it takes you. Some of those experiences can give you a lot of information about yourself. Some of those connections are really powerful and can like last in terms of their impression on you for a lifetime. I've had those experiences, and I know many of my clients have as well. So the thing that we want to eliminate is any guilt or shame for deviating or deciding like, hey, I'm going to follow this or that because I want to. I think that's a really important thing to remember is that, again, if you're doing this safely, sanely, consensually, we have no judgments about you making a choice for yourself that feels right in the moment just because, it feels good and not that it directly aligns with your goals at the moment. You'd be surprised how often those experiences can actually feed into your goals long term. Anyway, that's my little soapbox there. All right, that does dovetail really nicely into staying open to possibilities. Because no one is going to match your goals and values exactly. Remember when I talked about working with couples and having them do their sexual values? They're not one to one exactly overlapping perfect matches. And a lot of them do have a significant amount of overlap, but there are really significant things that are often different and points of conversation and understanding. So just think of these things as tools. They're tools to help you, again, sort of focus and be intentional in your process to decide I'm going to stay this course or I am currently deviating from my course because I want to, and I'm doing that intentionally, right? I think these are the ways that we get just better connections and better matches in our lives. So I also want to encourage people to let people surprise them for the better. We really do want to stray away from those, do's and don'ts lists and think more about qualities and experiences and values and intentions. That shift alone, I think, can transform your experience for the better. And I want to encourage you to take healthy risks. Okay. Dating is not something that we just do in a vacuum where everything is going to be perfect and nobody steps on our toes and we don't step on anybody else's toes. Part of this experience of getting what you want is sometimes making mistakes and owning those and taking responsibility and hopefully, leaving things better than you found it because you were able to take accountability, etc. But taking risk is really healthy for us to do. And even if you take risks because you're here on field because you're not quite sure what kinds of relationships you want, or you think you know that you want something and you're just trying it out and then you decide you want something completely different, that's absolutely fine. These are the risks that you're taking to know yourself better. And yeah, I think that's really important to give yourself the space to do that kind of work for yourself and to not use people as guinea pigs for that, but to know that this is a process. That's why it is, going back to the very beginning, very okay and very important for you to share that you're in a process of learning and that you're figuring things out. And hopefully, a lot of grace is extended to you, as it was to me along my journey, and it was extended to a lot of my clients on their journeys as well. So, with that, I want to thank all of you for joining live on the call today and anybody who's watching the replay. I'm hoping that we have some good questions. I'm looking forward to see if anybody shared their goals. And with that, I'm going to pop out and see if we have any questions to answer live on the call. Oh, it looks like we do have one question coming through, and that is, how do you balance being specific and being too explicit in your bio that it's off-putting or if you can be misunderstood? I find it hard to put it out there when I don't know who the audience is. Yeah, so, in terms of audience, I think it's really important to remember that on field in general, your audience is going to be, in my experience and my clients' experience, more open minded, more progressive, and more open to engaging in these types of conversations than your average dater will be. And it's really helpful to you for you to sort of almost like be a role model in sharing your experience or sharing what you want and what you desire. Is there a fine line between like explicit so that you understand exactly what I'm looking for and I'm not wasting your time, and explicit to the like, oh, that's really intense and I don't know if I need to know that right now? Yeah, there's a line, but I think it's different for every single person. And also, you putting it out there might get both responses from different people. Does that make sense? So, you being very true to, these are the types of experiences I'm looking for. I'm looking for a sub who I can choke, gag, and call a little piggy, like whatever it is, right? Okay, someone's going to be like, damn, dude, like that's really intense for me. And then someone else is going to be like, sign me the fuck up, right? So you have to really account for that wide array of taste and know that if you're sticking true to who you are and what you want, that there's going to be somebody out there for you who is very much into that. Then the question is there, attraction there? Do you connect on other levels, etc.? Or maybe you don't, and you don't have to. You really just want to connect on that specific like sexual level, and that's fine too. So yeah, I think everybody has their own personal line of what's too explicit, but that's kind of a litmus test, right? Of if you feel comfortable saying it, you also want a partner who is very comfortable hearing it. I hope that's helpful. Okay. I see another one that is, any tips for short guys? We stand a short guy. I mean, unfortunately, dating apps make it very difficult for short men, in that you can usually sort them out. A lot of people have height requirements, which are stupid, in my opinion, unless you're just like, there's something mechanically enticing about having somebody of a certain height when it comes to sex. But other than that, I try to tell people like height is not a personality trait. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other, and I just think that that needs to be more of a cultural shift in general, because at this point, I don't think you can go back and take away from the fact that dating apps have incorporated height as a sorting filter. Some of them have had it and took it away and then added it back. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry that that is the culture that we live in, but unfortunately we do. Um, at the same time, we have some interesting models for short men in Hollywood dating tall men, and I think that that's or short men dating tall women. Yes, that I think is really cool, and hopefully, yeah, those changes will happen. Okay. Oh, we stand short kings. Yes. Any other questions about, what to put in the profile, how to present your desires in this dating app environment? I see a lot of comments that people found this helpful, and that's really great for me to hear. Thank you. Okay. I'll give like one more minute. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. Hmm. Any thoughts on length of bio? Most bios at this point have character caps, unless you're on, I feel like, other sites like OkCupid, Match, eHarmony. Those really like allow you to say a lot. There's one that is about people with healthy lifestyles. I'm forgetting the name. But yeah, so a lot of them will have like a lot more space. But I think there's like a sweet spot. We want to know the crucial bits about you, and sometimes people get a little hung up on how to make that into digestible sound bites. But that unfortunately is sort of like what I think helps, because a lot of people don't have the attention span to read a long, lengthy thing. And again, you just don't have the space for it. So there's a sweet spot of I'm giving you a lot of detail and a lot of nuance, but I'm also condensing it into these kind of more short snippets. um, I find using cultural references sometimes is a really great shortcut. So, for instance, I have a client who has referenced like I don't want to say the name of the characters because I don't want you to steal it. It's really good. But he has on his profile a type of this couple, this sort of like fictional couple that he says he unironically thinks that they're his relationship goals. And so things like that where we're like, oh, we understand the cultural reference, and it gives us some information about what it is that you're looking for that might separate you from everybody else on the apps. I hope that's helpful. So that kind of duality of like giving specificity or something for people to sink their teeth into while also kind of keeping it brief, that's the sweet spot. Anyone else? This is basically free advice from a sex and dating coach. Take advantage. Okay, here's another one. Are there any resources or tools we can use to facilitate the challenging conversations of expressing kinks and desires to a partner? Does this differ long term versus new partner? Yes. a great resource, which you can find all over the internet in different forms, and there's also an app for this, is a yes, no, maybe list. This was designed initially just for kink to identify areas of interest, areas of terror, maybe, no, that's not for me. And then that little middle ground of, I might be into that, tell me more, or let's talk about what conditions might need to be in place for me to feel safe. So do a Google search for a yes, no, maybe list. They're out there. There's also an app, I believe it's called Spicer, where the two of you can fill out your yes, no, maybe, and the app shows you where there's alignment. And then you can have conversations from there. So, yeah, there's a lot of great tools and resources to use. And it is a hard conversation to start on your own. So sometimes it's like, hey, babe, like, I got this app and I want to try it out. There's some things that I think we would both benefit from knowing about each other and knowing if we want to explore together. So, yeah, have fun. Oh, and differ from for long-term versus new partner? I don't think so. I've had people who have, used yes, no, maybe lists when they first met, and because they both understood, "Okay, we're kinky, but we don't really know, like, we're not that into the scene yet, or we don't quite know what we like, so we wanna find out where there's overlap." So, I think that they're helpful no matter what stage of the relationship you're in. Thanks, everybody, for the positive feedback. This has been great. Yeah. So we're going to wrap up now. Thank you so much for joining. I am wishing you all the best in finding amazing connections on field to fulfill your every desire. And if not, most of them, and then some fun, unexpected fun along the way. All right. Take care.